Welcome to the Tony Freda Show. Tony Freda here. We have a special guest today. This is Mindy Kitai. Mindy is an investigative health journalist, science author, and former Philadelphia Magazine and TV Guide editor. She provides comprehensive long COVID, ME, and long vax news and political coverage that's neglected by our loving mainstream media. She's also the author of Shots in the Dark. Full disclosure, I did the cover for her book. Welcome, Mindy.
Hi, here's the book.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
So why don't we start with the book? So why did you write it, and what is it about?
Well, like most reporters, we write about what we need to know. And I had been vaccine injured within 15 minutes of my first and only Moderna shot. My life changed as I knew it, and it has never fully recovered.
Wow. And so
So,
you've
yeah,
gone
I
road.
wrote about it. Yes, I wrote about it because I wanted to know what happened, how are other people affected, and most importantly, how can we fix this problem?
Yeah. So what did you find out in your research?
About which part,
No,
Anthony?
We'll start with start with the vaccine, the wonderful vaccines. Um, what do you know about the vaccine and what's in it, and what do you think made you ill, and how did you get ill? How did that express itself?
Well, you mean what my first 15
The
minutes
original one.
within 15 minutes. So I was sitting there. I didn't want the vaccine, and I wouldn't have believed any physician except the physician I had. And it's a long story, but he is an infectious disease doc. He had done a lot of NIH work, and he knew the cast of characters very well. And he felt that this stuff was good. And I still grappled with it. And it, clearly has been the worst mistake I've ever made. At least up to now, tomorrow's another day. So, and what happened was I was sitting there and I felt I'm left-handed. So I had the shot in my right arm, and I'm very lucky I did that, because if I had had it in the left, my left side would have been affected first, and that would have been my heart. So at least I had it on the right side, and I had burning that started down my arm, and then I felt it go down my leg, and then the room started to spin. I started to get tinnitus, and when I stood up, I thought, how am I going to walk out of this room? The morning of the vaccine, I had walked 2.5 miles, which was my custom every morning. And by the evening, I was walking into walls.
Wow, it's horrible. It really is horrible, and I don't think there's a more important health issue right now, and I'm just
There
so happy
isn't.
there's people like you out there that are, because people are so misinformed. They've been lied to for decades about what they're injecting into their 10-pound babies' bodies. There's up to
Yes,
72 vaccines on the schedule now, and nobody knows what's in them, and nobody cares. They just trust the science.
they trust
Turns
the
out
science.
the science is pretty corrupt and pretty inadequate. There's no studies, or very few, showing vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. And those studies they do have don't, make the vaccines look very good. They have tons of adverse effects and lifetime difficulties, and including obviously things like autism, which they lied to us for 30 years and said nothing to see here. Anybody who says there's something to see here is a crazy person.
Crazy person.
Yeah.
And trust the science. Trust the science. But to trust the science has to be accurate. While I concentrated on how to get people well and what had happened to them in the various different forms, because not everybody had my symptoms, right? Some people had heart attacks. Some people went into cardiac arrest, especially the men. A neighbor of mine, her nephew developed myocarditis. And the only reason I believe he's alive is because he went to sleep not feeling well. And when he woke up, he had tremendous chest pain. And he's a young guy. And his doctor said, get to the hospital. At the hospital, they asked him about family history. They asked him about drug use. They did never ask him about a vaccine. And he said, do you think it could be from the vaccine? And they said, oh no, even though he had just had the vaccine like
Yeah.
the day before. So this is what happens because the doctors are not informed correctly, because there has been a concerted effort by the government to conceal what they've done. Because if they admit what they have done, I mean, people will be, calling for their heads, right? So this is what has happened. And this was, from what I know, again, not the focus of my book, but this was a gain of function vaccine. And for those who don't know what gain of function is, as far as a gain of function virus, you take a benign virus, you soup it up, you make it virulent. It's basically war games, except it's in the form of a vaccine. I'm sorry, the form of a virus. And then, unfortunately, it got out. And then you have to create a vaccine for it. Do I think it was released on purpose? No. Do I think it was a terrible accident? Yes. Do I think that the whole reason for pushing it to the from the Wuhan lab to the market was to conceal its origins? I believe so.
Yeah, well, they covered that up from day one. In the beginning, if anybody suggested online that it came from the lab, they said they were racist and anti-Chinese, and it was all nonsense. And I mean, I was personally just asking, if it could have come from the lab. Put in Facebook jail and shamed and censored
Right. Shame,
and
shame,
parabens. Like,
censored. Right.
so obviously, if you're not even allowed to question something, it's usually something's up, because I think that's a legitimate question, especially at the time when the whole world's focus was on it. We're trying to figure out what really happened. So the cover up started from day one, actually before day one, with Event 201. They had the whole thing planned out with Johns Hopkins. But so your own tragic injury set you on a quest to understand the mechanism of. I mean, you learned a lot, I'm sure, about the mechanism of the mRNA and the adverse events that are
Yes.
hurting people. So what do you think? What do you think is the main thing that in this technology that's creating all these adverse reactions
The
that we?
spike. The spike. I mean, there are other things that have been talked about it has HIV sequences. Again, I am not confirming that. That there's DNA in there. Again, that may happen. I don't know in all the vaccines, but what is universal for Moderna, for Pfizer, for AstraZeneca was the spike. And the vaccine should never, ever have been created using the spike protein, because in some people, the spike is toxic, and some people continue to make it. They never stop making it. And the spike causes in these susceptible people, and how many we don't know. We know when somebody has what I had, a reaction immediately that never stops, but we don't know somebody who 6 months later drops dead, a heart attack, or develops a turbo cancer, or develops ALS, or develops Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, better known as mad cow disease. And I have a whole chapter on that. And those people actually find out very quickly, within a few days to weeks. So depending upon your genetics, that's what you're going to end up with. And everyone is different. And
Yeah,
because we're not testing, in other words, if somebody develops a turbo cancer, and the risk of colon cancer has risen dramatically, right? And that's one of the first things, but it was already rising before the vaccines, in fairness, and before COVID. But after the vaccines, that's when the disability, third quarter 2021, disability rates went up 40%. Disability rates of 10% are catastrophic. Deaths also rose 40%. And this is in the working population, people age 16 to 64.
Wow.
And those are insurance records.
Yeah, the insurance
And
actually,
yeah,
they know what's really going
actuary, yes,
on.
they do. They're doing the math.
Yeah.
And one of the first people, Recep Levy at MIT, a mathematician, he was saying this stuff is not, this is not true. There is a definite spike in cardiac arrest, heart attacks, all of these things. And all of this was concealed. And what I would see over and over and over, and it was like there was one day, maybe it was a week, where I was going through and I saw the New York Times saying these reactions are rare. And then the Washington Post saying they're very rare. And then another publication saying they're exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
Where are they
Exceedingly
getting,
rare.
we're exceedingly rare. Where are they getting this information? They're getting it from the NIH.
Yeah.
They are no longer doing reporting, at least in science. They are retyping press releases. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing that went on during the AIDS crisis, same exact issue,
Yeah. Well,
except this time it's airborne.
yeah. Well,
COVID is airborne.
what's a big part of the problem, which I mean, I think we need to address? It's this unholy alliance between the media, big pharma, the regulatory agencies, intelligence agencies, and their cross purposes. They have absolute conflicts of interest. The media, when it comes to reporting on products that are made by their sponsors that are causing harm, and we're talking about some of these media outlets have paid almost 50% of the sponsorship comes from the drug companies. I mean, you just watch the ads. I mean, every other ad,
Right.
some drug. I don't even know what it is. It's like, trans couple running through a field, and then they have like
Right.
five.
They're all happy. They're very happy. They're very
They're so
happy.
happy,
They're
and I don't
holding
even know what the
hands.
drug is. I don't know what the
Right.
disease is. But then I know they say, side effects may include death. They have this whole disclaimer at the end.
Never. Right. There's no death there. It's always green fields. But the only other commercials left here on legacy media are walk-in bathtubs and reverse mortgages. That's pretty much it. So it's all pharma all the time. And how can they be objective? They're gonna, they won't be objective until they have to be objective.
Yeah, well, a lot of them should be in prison. But Katie Couric, speaking to the mainstream media, she really,
Okay.
I think I told you, she released this video recently saying, I don't know we have to find out what's going on. Everybody I know is getting cancer and turbo cancer and myocarditis. She was like, kid, we don't know what it is. There's no reason why this is happening. Why is it happening? It's like, Katie, we know, go to Substack. We'll tell you why everybody's getting cancer and dying in 2026. Because a lot of guys predicted it in 2020.
Right.
They said by 2026, you're going to be seeing this.
Right. Exactly.
And here we are. And I feel like I live in two parallel universes. Like there's people watch the mainstream media, which is basically drug company, deep state propaganda, and they never hear any of this stuff. Then they go to Substack and people like you were talking about it, and McCullough and all these other people, and Brownstone Institute, and it's just there's never like a merger of these two worlds. Like they never touch each other. And the people who just watch mainstream news have no idea any of this stuff is happening because they never talk about it. This should be, if we had a functioning media, it would be CNN 24 hours a day. It should be the biggest story, front page of the New York Times.
Absolutely.
But you get the opposite. You get them saying exceedingly rare. Yeah. So
Right.
I really think that's why I think what you're doing is so important, critically important, that we just keep pressing. We just keep pushing this information out there based on real studies, real research, real science, and real data. And hopefully some of it will push through this, firewall that the mainstream media has on the mind.
I don't think it will.
Really? You're not optimistic about that?
I am not optimistic about that because the average age, I believe, of senators is over 65 and of congresspeople, mid-50s. They're not on Substack for the most part, and they're definitely not really on X. So they're on Facebook, and they're not getting the information. And I have said this over and over, and I have been literally laughed at, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I said, I think we need a march because, you have millions of people marching. Well, the people who can march,
The wheelchair.
and in the wheelchair. And and then the New York Times, Washington Post, they're forced to reckon with this. And if there's enough pressure in that way, because they're not, because senators are not looking at this stuff. I mean, a few are,
Yeah.
but most are not. So no, I'm not at all optimistic. I tried before I wrote the book, I tried to place an article. And I will tell you, I tried every single venue and I got some nice rejections. And people saying, well, you can't, yeah, well, you can't be impartial. And I said, well, quite the contrary. I think only a person who understands this can wade through all of the crap that they're being fed. And but well, that may be, but thanks, but no thanks. And finally, I was relegated, Anthony, to a publication that's no longer in existence called Bitch Media. And they were, I swear, and they were dedicated to female empowerment, and they wrote a lot about health issues. And I said, they'll do it. They'll respond. Radio silence. Try it again. Radio silence. And that's when I realized I had to write the book. If Bitch Media is swallowing all of the garbage,
Yeah.
then there's no one's going to listen at this point.
That's
So I don't, I'm optimistic that eventually it will happen. I'm not sure in our lifetime.
yeah.
So,
Maybe not in mine.
so
I like your
everyone has
march
to
idea.
die.
I like the
What?
march idea, and I can see the headline in New York Times. Wacko anti-vaxxers storm the Capitol.
Yeah.
I mean, they always take the wrong side of these things, and it's just tragic. I mean, but I still have hope because there's people like you out there. There's people doing this good work, and I mean, hopefully, I believe, like, trying to keep the truth down. So you're trying to keep a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it's going to pop up because there's so much pressure being put into this thing, and it's so much at stake. And the more and more people see, just anecdotally, all the people around them, getting cancer and high school kids having heart attacks, like something's not right, and
But no
unfortunately,
one's testing for it. In other words, you get cancer, they are not taking biopsies of that cancer and testing for spike protein. They're not doing that. There are only a few labs in the world that do that.
yeah,
And so if they're not testing for it, they're not going to find it. And and no one wants to have treatment, because to have treatment for vaccine injuries is to acknowledge what they've done.
yeah,
And this will go down as by far a catastrophe. It will make thalidomide, which was horrendous and terrible, and something we avoided in this country because we had an FDA that was on the ball. It will make thalidomide look like a blip on the radar screen. There are 400 million people with long COVID. We don't know how many people have long vax. I talked to someone the other day who happened to be at a internet provider, I'll just say, and she was asking me, I had lost internet, I had lost TV, and I had lost all this stuff. And she asked me, I told her I'd written a book and it was really important that I'm able to get on the internet. What kind of book? A health book. What kind of health book? I wrote about COVID. What about COVID? And at this point, I knew there was something she wanted to ask me. I said, what is it you want to ask me? She said, well, I had a COVID vaccine, and I got Guillain-Barré syndrome, but my doctor said it's not related. And now she has chronic Guillain-Barré, and she's being treated with intravenous immunoglobulin every 3 weeks. But again, her doctors made no connection. And this is something that happens with many vaccines, Guillain-Barré. It's well known. So the doctors do not know this. There is such hostility, even among doctors for years. They suddenly um, push back, like you are going to give them something they don't want.
it's shocking to me. I mean, who the hell am I? I'm an artist, right? I didn't go to 8 years of medical school yet. I know more about some of this vaccine stuff than they do. The people
Of
who are
course
getting
you
paid,
do.
$500,000 a year to stick it into people's arms. And I mean, it's madness. I mean, how could I know more about it? They don't know any of this stuff. And this is what
No.
they do. This is what they train. This is what they get paid a lot of money to do. And they supposedly take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, but they're doing tremendous harm and a mass scale. And you're right. It's the greatest, catastrophe, man-made in history, and we're living through it and the aftermath of it. But the media's never going to report on it because they're complicit in the crimes. They were the biggest cheerleaders and promoters of all this insanity.
Right,
So of course
right.
they're never going to admit it, because if they did, they'd probably all go to prison, which is where they belong. So we're in this, but we're failures, but we must proceed.
We must
What else can
proceed.
we do? We're going to go down fighting. I'm not going down on my knees. And you say in your book, it's not an anti-vax book. Well,
The
I'm a proud
pro
anti-vaxxer.
science, pro
I
science.
am. I'm going to claim it. You can make fun of
Okay.
me, you can call me all these names and say I'm an idiot and Luddite, whatever. I don't care. You take the vaccine. Oh, and by the way, all you people who love these vaccines so much, I took like 3 because I was born in 1962. Now it's up to 72. If you're my
Right.
age and you love these vaccines so much, you worship Fauci, right? Why don't you go right now and get to 72? What's stopping you? You think these magical things are saving everybody's lives? Like, after you get to 72 and then you get myocarditis and supercharged cancer, then I'll say, okay, now you can say to me that I'm, a horrible person because I don't get the vaccines. Put your money where your mouth is. Vax up or shut up. And I'm sick of these people that don't know anything about it. They go to, Whole Foods, they'll read every ingredient, right?
Right,
And,
right, right, right,
and
right.
then somebody's going to inject something into their 10-pound baby's arm, and you ask them, name one ingredient, name one of the adjuvants in any of the vaccines on the 72 vaccines on the schedule. They can't name one. And I'm even doctors don't know some of this stuff. I just want to read a couple of the adjuvants that are in.
Please do.
This is some of the adjuvants that are in, guaranteed, they're in your baby's bloodstream.
Okay.
These adjuvants for the vaccines on the schedule. There's just a couple of them.
Okay.
Fetal bovine heart serum, potassium chloride, polysorbate 80, aluminum, delicious, formaldehyde, babies love that, neomycin, M59 squalene, acetone.
Well, we can remove our nail polish
Yeah,
at the same
stain
time.
remover. I know, I'm an artist. Sodium borate and
Oh,
phenoxyethanol. So you want that injected in your baby? And you want 72 of them injected in them? And by the way, I mean, I don't know. I worked for RFK for a year. I believe he's at least trying to push back against.
yes, of
But
course he is.
what do you do? I mean, he's getting he gets heat no matter what from every side and every angle.
You know,
Do you think he's trying to do good work?
absolutely. Do I, I've read his books, and yes, I think if he could say everything he'd like to say and do everything he'd like to do, we would have a lot more progress. But, the wheels move slowly in Congress, especially now, because they're complicit, or their predecessors are. But, the people at the NIH, people at CDC, the people at the FDA, a lot of them were involved. So,
Yeah, well, they're also corrupt.
they have nothing to gain from
No, they
admitting
have to.
all that.
They're also corrupt because a lot of them are getting a lot of funding from the, RFK talks about this, how many of these
Yes.
people get money from the drug companies, and basically it's, hush money. Just leave us alone, shut up, and let us just, make hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And then Congress will do things like this. Let's put my notes here. So
One thing I wanted to say about
Yeah.
the studies that have been done, most people, when they look at a study, even doctors, they read the title, they read the pithy abstract, maybe they read the conclusion, but they don't read the study. And what I found, for instance, with ivermectin, which was, of course, turned into a horse paste, even though it won the Nobel Prize for the two people who invented it. And the reason it won the Nobel Prize is not because it was a horse dewormer. It won the Nobel Prize because it prevents river blindness, which affects 20 million people. And it's endemic in Africa and parts of Asia. And so they turned it into a joke and scary horse dewormer. In fact, ivermectin's been used on people since the 80s. And when I looked at the studies and I read them thoroughly, I found that the studies were designed to fail, at least the ones that showed no efficacy. They were designed with too low a dose for too short a period of time. They were designed in these studies to be taken without food. To prevent COVID, taking it with a high-fat meal increases the potency dramatically. And they knew this, so they wanted it to fail. They would use very young people who are going to probably get over it anyway, not always. And some of these studies allowed people to be sick, Anthony, for 14 days. Now, Paxlovid, which is a Pfizer product, is a 5-day window. You get sick, within 5 days, you should start it. It doesn't mean it couldn't work if you started at 7 days, but who starts it at 14 days? And so this is the kind of, as my grandmother would say, shenanigans. Do people still use that word?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. That these scientists did. So I wrote to every single one of them who did a study like this, because some studies were done correctly. They were done with a 5-day window. They were done with an adequate dose over a long enough period of time. All of these things with food, all of these things were done correctly. They showed efficacy. And the ones that weren't didn't show efficacy. They showed safety, but no efficacy. I wrote to every single person who did those studies, the studies that showed no efficacy. Not one wrote back to me. And no one is reading these studies. So, and no one is also reading who is funding the studies.
Yeah.
And one thing my father taught me in my early 20s, and I have it at the beginning of the book, is that it's as important to read who funded the study as it is to read the study itself.
Yeah. And another reason a critical reason they demonized so aggressively ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, is that the only way to get emergency authorization for a vaccine is if there's no other treatment. So they had to negate any other treatment, so it was just this all onslaught campaign. If I did a post, I mentioned one of those two drugs, immediately banned, immediately shut down, put in Facebook jail for a week. Like, it was incredibly aggressive censorship campaign for that express reason.
Exactly.
It all really started, this complete corruption of the vaccine industry started with the PrEP Act, 1986, where the drug companies came to the Reagan administration and said, we're paying so much money in lawsuits from adverse events from vaccines that we're not going to do it anymore. We can't afford it. It's a financial liability. So it was Reagan who said, you have complete immunity. Any drug that gets authorized, gets put on a schedule, has complete immunity. Drug companies can't be sued. So what did they say? Let's start making more.
Right.
And it went from like 8 to like 72. That's not a coincidence. Okay. That was the profit model. We're not going to spend any money on lawsuits because we can't be sued. And even if you try to sue the government, it's very complicated and very difficult. They have the VAERS program, but it's still, people don't even know about it. And
they don't know about it, and nobody gets any money. I
Yeah,
have never seen a cent.
And it's a hard thing to determine, like SIDS, right? Remember,
Sure.
sudden infant death syndrome. I just read a study where they said that I never heard. It was always idiopathic, right? We don't know. Oh, healthy baby just dropped dead. Yep, nothing to see here. And meanwhile, when you look at the research, 75% of those babies had a vaccine 3 to 5 days before they died.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So that SIDS thing never made any sense to me. Like, why? How could a healthy baby just drop dead? Like, that doesn't happen. So it happens when they're injected with some of the things I read before, and certain percentage of them can't tolerate it. And
Right.
in
Right.
their little 10-pound body, it's just, it destroys their brain. It gives them autism and all these other problems. Like, we know that now. And they're better. I want to live long enough to see justice for these babies and these kids. You see them everywhere, these walking wounded, these poor kids that are just lost, and they have severe autism, and there's just legions of them everywhere you go. It never was like that when I was a kid. There'd be
Yeah.
one kid in the class who had some issues. Now they're everywhere.
Issues. We don't know what kind of issues, but
I don't know what
issues.
kind of.
Yeah.
I never heard the
Right.
word
Right.
autism when I was a
Right.
kid. Never even heard it. It was
It
so
was
rare.
1 in 5,000, and genetics, and yet the NIH has spent a tremendous amount of time on genetics. Yeah, genetics will make you more susceptible initially, but when there's more and more and more of it, whatever it is causing the problem, there'll be more and more kids affected. And what is it in California? 1 in 12 boys? It used to be one in 10,000 prior to 1960,
Oh,
1960, 1970, 1 in 5,000. Then it's getting worse and worse. And certainly vaccines can play a part, but I know kids who are not vaccinated and they also develop it. So are we dealing with also bad food, bad water, bad air? I mean, it's whatever it
it's
it
environmental.
is environmental. Genetics do not change like that. They take many, many more years to change than,
Yeah.
a decade. So yeah, that's
Yeah. Well, we're being poisoned from multiple vectors. It's not the vaccines
right.
that part of it, but I mean, everything we touch, we're subjected to EMFs and to toxins, and every single thing in your house is poison. I just heard that, the black plastic when you get takeout, like from the Chinese restaurant,
Yeah.
don't ever eat anything in black plastic. You know why?
Why is
Because
that?
that plastic is black because it's made from discarded electronics. And by law, electronic plastic has to be infused with fire retardant. So
Oh
fire
my God.
retardant chemicals are leaching into your food whenever you eat something out of those nice little plastic containers. So it's just, I mean, I could talk all day about the ways we're being.
Thank you for telling me that. I have a few.
Yeah, I know, get rid of
Well,
them.
they're really good. I
I
mean, they
know.
work really well, but
Sorry, I ruined your Chinese food
wow,
experience.
that's I guess I have to go back. I should go back to glass. And I did. I got rid of all the coatings with the pans, and I just use either stainless steel or ceramic, and I'm not even sure ceramic is okay. I don't know how that works. But I will say in support of one vaccine that I did have that I could have saved my life. And I did have a rabies vaccine because I had an unfortunate rendezvous with a very screwed up bat. Let's put it that way. And had I not had that, and I was really afraid to get that vaccine, but I think it was 7 shots, and I was dizzy for a bit, but I recovered from that. And that's 7 shots, and this thing, night and day.
Wow.
So it's not that vaccines can't save lives. It's just that in this case, they certainly, I don't believe, saved, at least for most people, I don't think they helped them
Yeah.
at all.
Well, they hurt a lot of people too, and I know your book talks about that. So anybody who has been damaged, by the clot shot, what are some? Maybe you could talk about some of the protocols that you found that work.
What they can do? Okay, I actually sort of made a list so I could kind of remember. Um, let's see. Okay. Things that I have tried and things that other people have tried that have been very helpful. Hyperbaric oxygen has gotten a lot of people well. And I got well on that. Unfortunately, it eventually came back. Hard shell, hyperbaric oxygen, not the soft shell. And you have to go for multiple treatments. And it's not cheap, but it's if you go to a reputable place, because there are a lot of places that are not run by people who have any experience at all, any certifications at all. But if you go to a reputable place, it's pretty safe. And that is one thing that I think is very helpful. Red light therapy and near infrared is extremely helpful. for energy, for brain fog. I do it every day, and it's kept me going. Nicotine patches have helped a tremendous number of people, and lactoferrin was very helpful for brain fog if it's the right lactoferrin. I just want to say that a lot of supplements on the market do not contain what they say they contain on Amazon and on all of the other places you can buy online, and perhaps even in stores. Real lactoferrin is not white. Lactoferrin is kind of a grayish pink. And for most things I would buy, I would only stick to name brands because there is so much bad stuff out there. And I have tried them. And you can see it in small print sometimes what they're really saying, you know. So stick to name brands. Augmented NAC, which is not regular NAC that you can buy anywhere. Augmented NAC was devised by scientists in Italy. I think they were physicists, and they found that regular NAC zapped a certain amount of spike protein, I think up to about 12%. And they, at least in test tubes, were able to zap about 99%. A lot of people have recovered quickly from augmented NAC. Other people have had no improvement at all, and it can be very irritating to the stomach. So for those people who have sensitive stomachs, they should take it with food. Vagus nerve stimulators are very helpful for sleep, and for some people for energy. I use that for sleep. You basically put this device on your neck. And the others are in the ears, but mine is on the neck. And you have a conductive, thing that conducts the electricity, which you barely feel. And you do it a few minutes a day, and it definitely helps sleep, at least for me, which can get really screwed up with both COVID and lung vax. And those are things to treat to treat some symptoms. But as far as the two things that might have saved us from the beginning, the first is Anktiva, which is Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong's drug. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong has a very interesting story. He was an immigrant from China whose parents fled during the Japanese occupation. He now lives in Los Angeles, and he was a transplant surgeon, and then he got into developing medications. He sold his company. He's worth more than $11 billion.
Wow.
And what he wanted, right. No, just chump change. So, but he has wanted to change medicine. And he developed this drug, Anktiva, which works differently from other cancer drugs and antivirals in that it strengthens the immune system by strengthening the natural killer cells, which, as the name suggests, kill stuff, and the cytotoxic or killer T cells, which, as the name suggests, kill stuff. And that's those two white blood cells are vital to an immune defense. If you don't have strong immunity, you're going to die, right? No matter what it is. And a cold can kill you if you don't have NK cells and you don't have T cells. That's why all the AIDS patients started to die. Their T cells were gone. So that is a drug. And this was one of the hardest things for me to stomach. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong went to the NIH, where he met with then director Francis Collins. He told Francis Collins in a politically quiet way that the vaccines were not going to get rid of the virus. But his therapy, Anktiva, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, would, in connection with it, he's not saying use mine instead of, though he himself only used his drug. He did not have any vaccines because he knew they were dangerous because they were oriented toward the spike protein, which is toxic. And so Anktiva, if we had had Anktiva, and he went before the vaccines came out, Anthony.
Wow.
So had had they used them, we would not have long COVID. We would not have long vax. We would not have any of this.
Now, can you get that drug through your regular doctor or?
Well, Anktiva right now, though it was just got a go-ahead toward approval with something else. In this country, we're very slow, even though it's an American-made drug. Anktiva is approved for one form of bladder cancer called cancer in situ. And now they're trying to get approval for another form of bladder cancer called papillary cancer. And they'll know by the end of the year. This just came out last night. I just posted on it on X. And this could be very good news because it will be most of the market they'll have with Anktiva. It's been used in clinical trials for many different kinds of blood cancers. Blood cancers it works tremendously well for because blood cancers turn over very, very quickly. And that's why even traditional chemo works pretty well for leukemias and lymphomas, because if the cells divide quickly, you can get it. You know, if they're slow, it's very hard for chemo to get it all. It works for any number of cancers because again, it revs up and empowers the white blood cells that fight cancers and viruses. That's how it works. So that is a drug to prevent COVID. If you already have long COVID or if you have long vax, maybe some of these other suggestions will work for you. If you have very minor symptoms, they may do enough. If you are pretty sick, maybe not. But what is shown to work, and we only have about 20 people so far, but is Dr. Kevin McCarran's treatment. And he is doing these treatments in Japan because only Asia does this particular kind of treatment, which is called dual filtration plasmapheresis. And what that does, it's also known as the Dracula method, because you hook up a catheter to the jugular vein and you filter out the plasma from the rest of the blood, the white blood cells, the red blood cells, and the platelets. They go in one bin. The other bin is the plasma. And this is where the spike protein has done all its damage, and the amyloid that has been formed, which are misfolded proteins, that's where that stuff hangs out. That's what clogged all of the embalmers who were trying to embalm patients because the veins were clogged with amyloid.
Oh yeah, that's a story that again, like it's a Substack story. Everybody on Substack has seen that, but I haven't seen the big CNN expose about.
No.
So explain that to people because the general public has no knowledge of that. They would think you're insane.
What, that there's this amyloid, this creature from the Blue Lagoon?
What the embalmers are finding, what the morticians.
Right. Well, they're these long, thick, white amyloid fibrils, and they try to embalm patients. Now, this did start during COVID, but it took off during the vaccine. When the vaccines came out, that's when they started seeing it. And for some reason, some people, again, genetics are the key, produced tremendous quantities of this and it strangled them, basically, their hearts, their arteries, their veins. It went everywhere, their brains. And they couldn't embalm them. And I think it's around 75% of embalmers face this.
Yeah.
Now it's gone down because people are not getting vaccinated as much. And so those are the people who died. And the people who are the walking wounded, these are the people that hopefully can be treated. Now, what Dr. McCarran does is he filters the blood, and he's honed it down to only a few weeks for most people. Depending upon how big you are, that will decide how many treatments you need. Because I'm pretty small, though I look really small because I'm sitting really low. Um, I'm If you're a small person, and I weigh about 115 pounds, I'm under 5'2", I probably have about 2.2 liters of plasma. If you're 6'4" and weigh 250, you might have 3.5 liters. Okay. So again, there are many variants, how much water you drink, how much muscle you have, all sorts of stuff. But basically, that will decide how many treatments you need. And so what they do is they filter out the amyloid. They filter out the spike. They filter out all of this garbage.
Mm.
And then, okay, and this is the really creepy part. If you don't do something to prevent it from happening, it will just start to repopulate. Again, it's not alive, but it is infectious, and it will just clog up the plasma again. And plasma moves everything, food, nutrients, gets rid of waste. So if that's clogged up, depending where it hits you, your stomach's going to be screwed up, your brain, your heart. And as one doctor, the only doctor that I ever saw, and who said to me, this is not a stomach problem. This is not a heart problem. This is a spike protein problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And right. And they want to send you to these different doctors and to get treated, but that's not the issue. The issue is get rid of the amyloid, get rid of the spike, which is generating this amyloid. You get rid of the problem. And then they give stem cell growth factors, which they get from the pulp of baby's teeth. It's a line, so it's not new every time. It's an established cell line. And they give that, and they have found that helps prevent the recurrence. And one of the people who I've covered, and if you go on X and you can read all about all these people I've written about. One of the people, his name is Robert Benson, and he was an athlete, and he got one vaccine, and that was it. I think it was a booster actually that did it to him. And it was a few days after he got married. He was going on his honeymoon, and he was going in the wilderness, but they demanded where he was going that he got a booster,
yeah.
which makes no sense. It's like, you're not going to see anybody, but you need it, maybe the trees won't like it or something. And so he got this, and that was it. And he spent the next 5 years pretty much bedbound or housebound, and he pretty much lost his brain. So after his first treatment, and he's a wild guy, which is one of the reasons he's so amazing. But after his first treatment, he ran, I don't know if it was 5 miles or 6, but he had basically been housebound or bedbound for 5 years.
Wow.
So that's how quick it works. Plasma changes from really dark to light, which is normal. And then they add, again, these stem cell growth factors to prevent it from recurring. And that's the treatment. And then you take the stem cell growth factors with you. And it's hoped that after about 8 or 9 months, you will deplete whatever vestige of amyloid you still have. But we don't know. I mean, we have information for about 8 months of people still maintaining their gains, but we don't know long term what will happen. And there could be negative side effects. We just don't know.
Yeah. Wow. And are you planning to go to Japan for the treatment you talked about before?
If I'm accepted, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
The problem that's happened to the people who are treating is that now they are sick because of a phenomenon known as shedding. And this is so sci-fi. But they're handling the blood and they're with these people all day long.
Oh,
And
man.
so now they need to get treated.
Yeah.
And there's only one hospital in Japan doing this.
Jeez, the shedding thing is, yeah, that's terrifying because
Right. It's
who's going to
it's
want
like
to treat you?
airborne AIDS.
Like a leopard colony or something.
Yes, yes. It's like airborne AIDS.
Wow.
And that's the reality. And that's what no one wants to hear. And it's just so scary. And it scares the shit out of me. And that part. And so what do you do in life? Do you always have to mask? Will masks work when you're around people who have long COVID or long vax? We just don't know. Now they're trying to bring the technology here. They're trying to raise funds, but this should be NIH. NIH should be doing this. And of course, they're not. It's always left to the sick people and the few doctors who are supporting them to do the work.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to do here. Mary Talley Bowden is one of the doctors who's trying to get this thing off the ground. And she's amazing. And she's one of the people who sued the FDA over ivermectin.
Yeah.
Because the FDA was trying to say, they're doctors. They're not allowed to tell doctors what to do.
Horse dewormer.
Horse dewormer. Yes, that's
They're
what I should
insane.
have called the book. Horse dewormer. So
Well,
anyway, so those are the two things.
yeah.
Activa, if you've never had a problem, but again, you can't get that drug yet, you should be able to. And one of the reasons this drug isn't more widely available is it isn't big pharma, it's small pharma, and it's a disruptor, and they don't want a disruptor, certainly not from a small company.
Yeah. Well, the whole, vaccine hesitancy movement, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's really the people driving it are people like yourself who have been injured. And RFK was injured. He got spasmodic dysphonia from a vaccine.
Did
And
he? Do you know which one? I'd be really curious to know that. Because I know he has a sister with it as well.
yeah, but he said it started right after the vaccine. He talks.
Right.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I can send you some information about that. But
Right.
and also by mothers who take their kids in, and the kid's fine, and then they come home from the vaccine and he's not fine. So it's these people who they know it's not that question. They know this thing injured them and their children, and they want to obviously help themselves and their family, but they also want to spread the word and they want to work with these good doctors. There are good doctors out there, not many, but
No, not many.
but there are some, and the ones you mentioned today. I mean, you've given us so much great information today that it gives me some hope that at least people who were damaged by, I mean, you might not agree with me, but I think the first weapon was a gain of function bioweapon that escaped from a lab. And,
Yeah, of course.
I know, but I think the COVID vaccine is also a bioweapon. So they treated a bioweapon with another bioweapon. So
Right,
it was like a 1-2 punch.
right.
And it hurt a lot of people because they got billions of people on the planet to succumb to this fear-based mind control campaign that was incredibly effective, and also terrifying to see how many people not only went along with it, but it became like a cult. And if you questioned it in any way, you were a heretic. So it would begin like the religion of COVID. I've never seen anything like it. But I was a heretic, and I still am. And I just want to thank you for the good work you're doing. And I hope that the treatments that you're pursuing and researching and using on yourself give you some relief from all the suffering that you've gone through because of the vaccine and the COVID. But you have any final words for our audience?
I'm trying to think. Well, it's one of my favorite quotes. I have two favorite quotes. One, and why people are sheep here, because this is Mark Twain, it's not me. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
Well
Yes.
said, Mark
Yes.
Twain.
And that's Mark Twain. And the second is my favorite quote, and it's Voltaire. Common sense is not so common.
Amen to
So
that.
that's my final word on it. So
Well, thank you so much, Mindy.
thank you for having me. Thank
yeah,
you for
where can
having
people
me.
find your great work?
Well, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever it's going to be called, at C as in Carl, F as in Frank, S as in Sam, Central. And that's where you just do at CFS Central. Or if you put in Mindy Kitai in quotes, it will eventually come up as I'm the only Mindy Kitai in the universe.
Mindy, hold up the book and tell people.
Oh, yes. This is your amazing cover.
Yes, it is
Amazing
amazing.
cover. Okay. Amazing
Very
cover.
modest too.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful cover.
So the book,
Okay.
where I'm all the places you get books, you can get it, I assume.
Yes, it's on Amazon worldwide. And
Worldwide, baby.
worldwide. The Kindle is only $9.99. And if you buy a book, do a review because it's the only way to spread the word. And you can do a 2-sentence review. And even a bad review can be interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Well,
But
thanks
no,
again.
I'm not encouraging bad reviews, but yes, however you feel. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for everything you do, Mindy.
And
Take care.
right back to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.